everybody. Hello, I'm Lisa. It is so thrilling to be here today with you all. Let's just start with Happy Pride. It's fantastic to have this opportunity to be so well hosted by the Stratford Festival in this beautiful space with all of your beautiful selves. And to be in an environment where we are supported and where it's healthy and exciting to reveal ourselves and express ourselves and learn from each other, and especially from our guests today, and to keep growing as communities in all of our beautiful diversity. So I'm thrilled to celebrate that today, especially in a context in the world where there is so much expression that is being restricted, and so many valiant, courageous struggles that are being put out there to keep the fires burning in a peaceful, healthy, growing, important way. So just acknowledging the space that we're in, and how these kind of conversations in these kind of environments hopefully contribute to making the world an even better place for everybody in it, for all of us here today as well. So what a thrill to have you both here, and you, Henry, I love you. What a thrill to have you both here. I won't repeat anything in that bio, but what an incredible impact the two of you have made, and the generosity of your art. Music, you have performed with people, such significant people from around the globe. You've written books, you've had your books adapted to TV, your music has been part of the many films. You beat out Elton John and Lady Gaga for an award. That's a nice little, nod. And you made Seth Meyers giggle like a schoolgirl in your interview. They did an interview in 2022 with Seth Meyers. I've watched it. He's a late night talk show host. I've watched him a lot. And I watched this interview, and he was giggling like I've never seen. It was
it's
great.
Delightful.
Yeah, but you just work some magic with them. That's a not in and of itself necessarily an accomplishment, but it is a nod to how open you are and how you draw so much good out of so many people with all that you do and with being yourselves.
Thank you.
So that's just to start the celebration. Today, what we're hoping to do is to learn more about Tegan and Sara's journeys through music, literature, and I think really timely today, advocacy and the incredible contributions they've made with the Tegan and Sara Foundation and other things. I thought to start off, we could offer some context, and Anne-Marie, because we have met before. This is not a blind date, although it would be an exciting one. Yeah, maybe Anne-Marie, you want to...
Was it back in 2017 that we attended a concert in St. John, New Brunswick? And I remember we needed to arrange childcare, so it was that long ago. Wow. In order to go from our camp in New Brunswick up to St. John, and I think that's the first time we met. And that was thrilling. Our friends in Stars were playing, and so they introduced us to you. You don't have to remember that you met us.
Fangirl. I was that tall
totally
one, fangirl.
Yeah. And then Tegan and Sara sent me the galley proofs of their memoir, High School, which I read, and if you haven't read it yet, you have to. And I think there's some pre-signed copies. Am I right? Yeah, out there. So make sure you get your copy. It is poignant, it is sweet, it is inspiring, it is revelatory. It's so personal, and it's so well crafted. And they had actually asked me to read it, and their publisher asked me if I would give a blurb, which I was absolutely delighted to do. And I was then invited to a book launch event that you did in Montreal. What was that, 2022?
2019.
2019? Okay, yeah, just pre-lockdown. And so I went, and I was thrilled because I was on the list. Yeah, and so we went and we saw you. It was a beautiful event, and you read and you played and you sang, and there was a whole visual component to it. But afterwards, you invited me onto the bus. And I went behind the theater and onto the tour bus. And people ate McDonald's, and I was there.
Yeah. I'm not going to say, not that I little bit of embarrassment after the fact where I was like, just ate McDonald's in front of Anne-Marie's McDonald's.
I can tell how important that event was, because I was there, but Anne-Marie has forgotten.
I didn't want to say it, but I was like, technically, I brought you both in, and, so you both watched. But individuation is really important. So Sarah and I are really working on I statements. So you know, she just remembers being there on her own. We have to just let her remember it that way.
Successful. Yeah, so that was beautiful. And then a little while later, your foundation reached out and invited me to sign a letter in protest of the suite of anti-trans, restrictive, anti-LGBTQ2SI+ legislation being tabled at that time in their home province of Alberta. And I was honored to sign that letter. And I was joined by, there's so many signatures, right? I was particularly chuffed, however, to notice that there were a lot of M's between McDonald and Murray, because my whole life it's like Anne Murray. But I guess Anne Murray signed that petition. I was very proud to put my name on that petition as well. So it was a short walk when Julie asked us to curate and participate in the Pride Forum, of the Meehan Forum for Pride Week. I thought, is there a world in which Tegan and Sara join us here in Stratford? So it was a long shot, and I reached out, and it was a dream come true. So here we are.
And I will say that we had outlawed any public appearances and any work. And when we got your text message that you wanted to get on the phone and talk with us, I was like, oh no. And then we got on the call and you asked, and like without even talking to each other, we were like, of course we'll do it, you know? And then we called our manager and we're like, don't be mad at us, but we agreed to do a thing. Yeah, how can we say no to you?
Thank you. That's high praise.
Can we also just embarrass you a little bit and say...
I'm already embarrassed.
Okay. You know, and part of why, I mean, there were so many people that we wrote about and thought about when we were writing our memoir, but you were so central to our high school and queer story. Fall on Your Knees is like, for us, was revelatory for us as teenagers. And our mom, who claimed not to know we were gay, / me when I came out, seemed very surprised and shocked. It seemed like she was actually trying to turn us gay, because she was always giving us opportunities to experience the gay lifestyle via, you know, books and film. And she would always come home. She was like very cool mom, and she would come home, you know, on a Friday night we'd have friends over, and she'd say, I picked up some movies from Blockbuster, and like it would all be gay shit. And in 12th grade, I had just started hooking up with my best friend, who was a woman, and one night my mom came home from work and she literally brought in all these VHS tapes, and she was like, we were like looking through it, and it was like, When Night is Falling, and like, you know, and my friend David turned to me and she was like, is your mom aware of what's happening? Or is this just random luck that she's just basically renting you like every lesbian film that's ever been out? But I think our mom associated queerness with alternativeness, and our mom was always very alternative, so I think she was actually just trying to be cool. Like, not trying to be cool, she was cool, she is cooler than us still, but she was just trying to get us as much subversive art as she possibly could. It just happened that it was really connecting with us in a deeper way.
And I think too, because Fall on Your Knees has a musical thread as well. I mean, it's obviously so important in the book, and I think the combination of music and queerness. My mom gave us that book, like, so cool. Like, just was. Oh yeah. Oh, my mom was the gateway to everything. Even drugs. She doesn't like it when we say that, but she didn't literally give us drugs, but she constantly was bragging about all the drugs she did when she was in high school. And we were like, what are we gonna do? We're gonna just be sober in high school? Like, wow, God. Anyway, she doesn't like that joke, but or any jokes like it. But yeah, she gave us the book. She would always read books and then say, I think you would like this, and we would pass it back and forth, and we gave it to all of our friends, and we read it in school, we read it in class, we reread it, and it was, you know, we talk a lot, and this is part of why I think our career and ultimately the foundation has been so inspirational, is we had, I don't like to say we had no example, but we had such few examples that, you know, to understand that at some point we were part of we were now part of the art that other people were gonna find.
That's
You know?
huge, because even when you were coming of age, there were few.
There were a few, but when we start to
Yeah.
list it, it feels like there was actually a lot, but like there wasn't a lot. It
No,
wasn't.
the fact that you could just list it.
Yeah, fair.
There was no
Yeah.
one. And I find it particularly moving that your mom, and I think we're probably the same age as your mom, right? That your mom was able to hand you something across a generation.
Yeah.
Now that, there were fewer opportunities like that for when we were coming of age and coming out. And for there to be a Canadian community of queer elders, basically, and of art and culture and all kinds of achievements that can be shared, and hopefully is not up for the kind of erasure that happens over and over and over again, right? So that cross-generational, it's very moving, it's very real, it's profound.
Yeah.
And I know how old that makes me seem, it makes me seem as old as I am. And, but it's beautiful.
No, but it is beautiful, and it's so important, and I think, more than, I think Tegan and I have always been like sort of like embarrassed or sort of like uncomfortable with saying like, oh, we're role models, or, whatever that is. But at some point I realized like that was doing us a disservice, and it was doing a disservice to the people who were finding us inspirational and impactful, and instead like embracing it and thinking, oh my God, like maybe someone's kind of sort of half clueless mom is bringing home a Tegan and Sara, book and going like, oh, I like this, and then being like, wait a second, okay. But like I thought you were gonna point out like a clueless mom buys high school, brings it home, is like, you love this band, and thinks it's about us being gay, but actually it's really just about how much acid that we took. Wait, I thought this was an inspirational. But I was gonna say that, your book, like all the things we're making are artifacts that are out there that we found, and I think that's probably one of the coolest parts about being an artist, whether people find it today or in 10 years, or, I mean, I don't think we'll be here much longer than that, but I think like there is, convince me otherwise. But I think that was one of the things that like informed so much of our early art, was that there wasn't that impatience there is now to like, when someone makes something now, they want people to hear it now. They want to go online and post it now. And I think one of the things that I think a lot about when I'm making things now is how it felt to discover, like even, I don't know why I always think of Go Ask Alice, or that terrifying memoir or story that now I've just read. I listened to a whole podcast about how it's kind of fake or whatever.
Really?
Yeah, so I did a lot of drugs and I can't actually remember the story, but I think it's fake. It's basically, it was a create, but like to find these little things throughout our young life and to find pieces of ourselves in it is so significant. And I always think about that now when I make things, like as much as I would want it to be very successful, even if someone finds it 15 years from now and it creates some sort of connection for them, it's like that's the gift of being an artist.
Yeah, well actually, when you're, speaking of looking back when you were younger, you're just in the mid blush of your careers. You're just really getting started in some ways. I can say this because I'm older than you. And also, you have so much energy and you've already accomplished so much that I know that that's just sort of the beginning. Whether you accumulate more work or you go deeper into things, or the growth is going to be exponential from here. But looking back on when you were younger, how do you see the arc? Like, do you see the work you've done as being completely different than what you do now? Or could you have imagined back then that you would be having this trajectory in your music, like the changes and growth, like from, learning to play the guitar in secret in your memoir, to like the Oscar, Academy Awards and all that, complete shifts?
No.
I definitely have been regularly surprised at, and I'm not saying this to be funny, but like, I think Tegan and I we are charismatic, we are sometimes not annoying enough to hold the attention of a group of people, and I think we have something special. I totally think we're special. I have met wildly talented people, just like bananas talented. Like people sing and you just like fall on the ground, you can't believe what you're hearing. Like we're not those people, Like we do something special when we sing together,
but I've been around.
I want to take a moment. I've been doing a lot of therapy. So. I was recording this part of the show. If you could just send it to me, because like when we're not annoying, sometimes can hold a group of people's attention. Not that talented, can't really sing.
I didn't say we couldn't sing. I said I've been around people that are like staggeringly talented in this way where I'm like, I get it, you know? And
So if it's like a scale and that's them, right?
Yeah.
And then like, shit, what's
No.
very good?
I think we're like in the middle. I think we're in the middle. And I don't mean that I'm not trying to say that to be bad. I'm just trying to be realistic. And I think that when we started out, my vision or what I hoped for was that it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I hope we can have a long career doing this exact thing. I just wanted to be able to have a long career doing what I wanted to do. Like
Right.
that was all I cared about. And I was, as a young person, even when we launched our music career, by which I mean we just said, we're not going to university. My mom was so pissed. And we said, but we'll do music. That was like the launching of our career. And my mom was like, well, you better get out there and book gigs. And so we played at like a coffee shop a couple times a week. And, you know, it wasn't much of a career launch, but like for all intents and purposes, it was like the launching of our career. And I just remember thinking, because I just don't want to be the employee of someone. Like I just remember that feeling of like,
Joke's on her, because guess who she works for?
So you're what I heard, and I've done therapy too, so what I'm hearing.
Guys, I've done lots of therapy too. I'm just putting it out there, just in case anyone starts thinking about it.
That's really why we're here.
You are, I think you're describing the fact that what you and Tegan do is greater than the sum of its parts. And the scientific term for that is it's an emergent quality. And that's when you put all these things together. Some of them might be excellent, some of them might be competent, this, that, there's a whole range, right? You put them together and it's an order of magnitude, it's qualitatively something new and something bigger, right?
That's a very nice way to put it.
That's a much better.
There's a generosity, especially when you acknowledge that, oh, it's time for me to agree to be a role model, to agree to be looked to. That is agreeing to take on a kind of leadership, right? And that is maturity. And there you are, like you're in your mid-40s, right? That's kind of just right on schedule. There's also, I think there's a peculiarly and beautifully Canadian ethos and character at work here, insofar as you have really branched out and worked in all these different media and genres. That is not uncommon. We do that. I work in theater, actor, playwright, author, blah blah blah, right? All these different
I plan
things.
to be a rock star.
It's not too late.
Never too late.
But I am
And
not.
you don't even have to be good, according to Sarah.
That too is very Canadian. That too is very Canadian.
That is
Boys
that
and
is
ever.
also very Canadian. But this idea of wearing many hats, sometimes for pragmatic reasons, but also just because it's the curiosity. It's the curiosity of the artist. And there are so many theater artists and so many fiction writers in Canada who do many, many different kinds of storytelling, right? And it seems to me that you start with your guitar in secret, but you are always telling stories, right?
And that means you're also always listening. You're listening to somebody, you're listening to some, because to be heard and to be received and for you to touch so many notes in people means you're listening to something bigger than yourselves and responding to something. And to your point, Sarah, like I know what you're riffing about, but when I was working at the theater school and I worked with young artists for so many years, it was so inspiring. But there's kind of a truth for an actor anyway, that your talent is already there. Like every child is creative, every person is gifted, but the game changer is the work. that you do, right? So there's kind of this a powerful humility to saying it's not just about your gifts, it's actually about how you apply yourself and the discipline and the humility and the commitment and that part. And that is something that like shot you out of the hemispheres because you were committed to something greater, as Anne-Marie's saying. Not only is your artistry greater than the sum of its parts, but your discipline and commitment to relationship, to work, that is the real, that's really a superstar.
Yeah, at your guys' talk yesterday, which was so fantastic, I told you about this, but I wrote notes afterwards because there was a couple things that really struck me, and one was talking about how like all of you on stage had either had started in or had a deep relationship with theater, and that's a really great testing ground for art, because you fail until you get the show up, you know, like there's so much trial and error and there's so much failure. And I was saying that I really resonated with that because that's music, you know, like when you think of our average record has 14 songs on it, maybe 2 will be the ones that people call out for, which means 12 technically were Sarah's. It's not true. Our first big song was Walking the Ghost, that's Sarah's song. She's been slacking since, but no. But then also like the first 10 years was traveling around the world playing half-empty clubs or empty clubs trying to win people's attention, and when you didn't, it was failure. You know, it was trying to not incur a ton of debt. It was trying not to be disappointed, or trying not to disappoint our record label and be dropped. It was, you know, trying to get over the headlines, which were always like lesbian twin duo, you know, and terrible press, and like it was almost all failure.
Wow.
It was almost all criticism. It was almost all like just a consistent flow of the universe saying, there's no reason for you to be doing this, stop. And yet, there was a compulsivity and maybe like a sort of like divine connection to the feeling of making things and delivering them to an audience that propelled us through that. And that is, I believe, the only reason why we are sitting here 26 years later still as artists, is because it just didn't matter what we encountered. There was never a question for me that this is what we were supposed to be doing. And when people come up and ask advice about how to be an artist or how to make it, I don't know how to tell you to have that feeling inside of you that nothing could happen that would prevent me from making things. Nothing. I mean, death.
Yeah. Well, and actually, on that note, yeah. How do you like the struggle part is so important for people to hear, for me to hear over and over again, because you really do get the impression that people are just discovered, right? And no one is ever discovered. It's always hard work, and it's particularly hard work for women, for lesbians, like there are groups of us for whom the work is exponentially harder to express what's important to be heard. And so what happens when you actually have what is considered positive feedback or success or whatever the word is? Like you're on a platform where you're celebrated and people are getting it. How do you, like, are you able to be fed by that? Like, is it nourishing, or is it still like, that doesn't really exist, that's not really true?
I think sometimes, yeah. I mean, absolutely. And I think for both of us, and I'll just say too, like when I was describing us somewhat jokingly earlier, I never said I didn't believe in us, or that I don't think that we are, you know, destined to do this. Like, something has propelled us, and especially through what Tegan is describing, you know, the earlier part of our career where it seemed everything around us was determined to sort of tell us the opposite, you know, like I don't do this because of an audience, I do, or money, or any of those things. Like, I did it because I had to, like, I felt like I didn't know how to be free of the addiction or desire to like take a feeling and a thought and put it into something and share it with people. And even if it was like one person, I know that's like a cliche, but like I did feel this desire to do that. It didn't always make me happy, but I felt like I had to do it, and I felt like I was called to do it. And so it's confusing because sometimes the big moments, you know, a really like a big audience and like an amazing set where we come off stage and everybody's like really excited, sometimes that produces a really significant low for me, where I always think of this like interview or this video archival footage with Depeche Mode. I always think of this. I saw this when I was young, but they play Wembley Stadium and it's this incredible show, and he gets backstage, the lead singer gets backstage and he just is crying and he says, I'll just never have that again. It will never be like that again. And I think there is this kind of,
Oh my god.
I know, but I think that's it. Like sometimes when you have these big significant highs, there is this feeling, a depressed feeling, like I can't live in that forever. I can't have that forever. And it's such a downer.
It's kind of like taking ecstasy. Like, I understand. There's like the moment where you're like, we're not meant to feel this way. Like, you know, I haven't done drugs in a very long time, I don't want to say,
It
but
sounds like it. It's like a distant memory that you just keep recalling.
yeah, it was pretty distant, but anyway.
Anyways, I'm just gonna say that, but then there's other things like, this is just sticking out in my brain because I fell asleep listening to Fresh Air last night. Like, talking to Terry Gross and being on Fresh Air was like a bucket list thing for me my whole career, and we got to when we put out our memoir, and like that's
September 19th,
it was on our
2019.
birthday. It was on our birthday, and I remember the feeling of just pure satisfaction and joy. That conversation, every time she laughed, I just thought, what a pleasure to make her laugh. Like, it was just.
But maybe that lends to what you're asking, which was like, does it feed you? This is something that I've been, you know, thinking a lot about, is the difference between attention and acknowledgement. And I think that sometimes an audience of people singing along, screaming, like adoring you, appreciating your art, doesn't feel like acknowledgement, it feels like attention. And I think as we've gotten older and we've gotten further into our career and our lives have gotten fuller and not bigger, like as we've started to build out family and try out different disciplines and spend more time at home and become disgruntled about social media and the parasocial relationship that we all have with it, it's like, yeah, the feeling that I desire to feel, like the feeling of being fed, comes from a very different place now. And it can come from a really amazing conversation with Terry Gross, or some of the time we've spent with you guys. Like it's so satisfying to also just talk with other creatives, you know. Last year I wrote music and just sent it to Sarah, a couple friends in my management, and then decided I didn't want to put any of it out. Because I felt acknowledged, I felt seen, I felt like I'm an artist still, I can do this, I'm capable. Sarah had written me and said, these are fantastic songs. And I thought about the process of releasing them, which is the sad part of this, is that part disgusted me so much, I just didn't want to do it. It exhausted me so much. I'm like, my superhero name right now is Tegan, and I'm just like, thought of having to like go out and create the packaging and the video and do hey guys, what's up? Sarah, got new songs coming at you, and we're gonna waterfall these bitches for the next couple months. Like I just instead just kind of put them in a folder on my computer and just opened up a document and just started writing a new book. And I don't know, you know, like I just was like, maybe I'm just a creative, and that finally, you know, maybe it is middle age, maybe it is we're in this perfect moment where it might be about, you said, going deeper into things.
Mm-hmm. Well, the engine, there's an engine that we all have and need when we're young. I mean, speaking as an artist and a lesbian, but I think it's probably a human thing. There's an engine when you're young that compels you to become who you are. Young adulthood, you know, you're driven, right? You're driven to express and to do what you need to do, whatever that is in whatever form. But then that engine, if it continues at that rate when you're 20 years later in your life, that can be a problem because it's a different context, and you know.
And you're running on adrenaline.
Yeah.
And that's very, very hard on a person. So what I'm hearing is, again, that it's a very, it's a very creative, it's a creatively rich time, as well as perhaps a restorative time. Is it a nourishing time? So how do you've started to answer this a little bit, but what do you do, where do you go for nourishment? What does that look like?
I mean, I think right now, what's so, at least in my own personal life, being a new parent, I feel really nourished by being home, you know, like being
for the first time probably in my life, and I mean I've had like versions of this during other, you know, like more introverted periods of my life, but like I feel very off the grid, if you will. Like I feel really satisfied by, actually, even though this is so silly, but it's like I'm not craving media attention, or I'm not craving like people hearing my creative ideas right now, but like I sit down to eat dinner, and if my toddler like unprompted says, "Thanks for cooking dinner, Mom," I'm like, oh my god. Standing ovation. Like, if we can get through the meal and he doesn't throw all of it on the floor or inside of his butt or whatever, like I'm just like, you know, that sounds so, it sounds so like whatever, but it's so meaningful. I feel so connected right now to like family and routine and I guess like in a strange way, like being a parent is my sort of new creative practice right now. Like I'm obviously like trying to be creative in other ways, thinking more about my mortgage, for example. But but yeah, I don't know. I feel like I need to be nourished by those things right now. I think I'm just like I'm a little bit burned out and confused by the entertainment landscape, and I'm really excited to be behind the scenes. Like a lot of the projects Tegan and I are working on and nurturing right now don't have us at the center of them. We're behind the scenes. We are not having to sell them based on us being front and center, and that feels like a huge relief.
That's a big shift. That's a big evolution.
Yeah,
Right. That is, and that's appropriate for this time.
I think
It
so.
is time.
Somehow it feels like weirdly mature, and also like I feel like I said this over dinner the other night too. But like I used to feel really comfortable with being personal, and I think there was something about when we started our career. The world seemed bigger and more like opaque to me somehow. It was like even when you would put something super personal out into the world, it just felt so hard to reach people, and everything just feels so like surfacey and like I don't know. It's like the digital age has just made everything feel like it's required of you. When you used to put something out personal, it was sort of like brave and intense, and there was a reward in that. And now it's sort of like required, I think, to like cut through. And
I don't want to interrupt that thought, but it's reminding me that I wrote this thing down the other day that Mike Birbiglia said, like that you can't use the stage, like your time on stage, as therapy with the audience, because your job as a performer is actually to give the audience something. And I think we're living in a time where it feels like we're not, because it's like we make the art, but instead of us getting on stage convincing you to buy it, you just stream it. It's worthless to you.
not actually worthless to you, but like it feels like that we're in a new era where the exchange for so long was.
Well, now there's no friction. It's just there. You can be sitting in a movie theater and hear 13 seconds of a song. You can bring it up immediately, know what it is, put it on a playlist, and forget you ever had that moment where that deep sort of nurturing of obsession and connection and relationship with a piece of art now. It's so much more difficult to do that, which leads me back to this idea of these artifacts of things that we found. Like, I like when someone comes up to me and they're really, really, really young and they just found us. That gives me hope. Like, that helps me to sort of figure out how to make the next thing. So for right now, I feel like it's less about nourishment, and I'm actually just, I think it's two-part. One, it's seeking new inspiration. So looking in other creative fields, meeting other creatives, and seeing if that sparks something different in me. And it's not to say that I'm not inspired by Sara. Like, I would do anything for Sara to send me a new song. Which makes me feel very emotional to say, but like, I would do anything for her to make something new. God, so much pressure. I don't have time. I'm making food for my kid. That's all I do. But I don't. Do you know how much they eat at their age? I had to get a Costco membership. He eats more calories than I do a day. I don't mean to promote. I mean just to hear it, because that is what inspires me. When I was in a hotel room in wherever we were, Paris, and Sara, I had a Dell laptop, like heavy, like a heavy old school, laptop Dell in 2003. And Sara, we arrived into Paris and to go on this awful tour opening for this band Hot Hot Heat. which was great, but they were about to be the biggest band in the world in that moment, and we were lesbians. And so she pulled out this like jewel case and opened it up with a CD and put it into my laptop and played me Walking with a Ghost. And I was like, that's it. Like, that's the next record. You know, and I think so part of me right now is just looking for that, like, when's that piece of art gonna come that's gonna make me feel like we're like we're on the track and we're locked in, you know?
That was pretty good. Sound effects.
Yeah,
That was good.
at least I do it all. The second thing I think that I'm doing right now is breathing. Like, and I mean on behalf, like, for everyone, like, just take a moment and see, will anyone find it? Will they find the art we made? Will they discover it? Will that create inspiration, you know? Maybe it's one person or maybe it's a viral moment. I don't know what it is. The universe of what that could be is unknowable, but I think I'm waiting to see, does a song or something we've done in the past have a moment? You said this to me last night, that like we have this existing catalog. We have 26 years of music. And the average Tegan and Sara fan hasn't heard most of it. And what a gift that is, to think about not just reinventing it, but just to actually trust that it's out there to be found. And not be in a panic, like, let's go, waterfalling, singles, new video content. Like, just trust that Sara can keep feeding her child and paying her mortgage without us having to.
It looks less and less likely, honestly.
Yeah. The notions of trust and focus and breathing and caring and nurturing, all this that you're talking about, that is also in your foundation, in your activism, right? Like that sensibility that and those verbs, they are inside that foundation, right? And I wonder if you could talk to us about why that emerged. We touched on it a bit, but why it emerged and where does it fit in your lives now?
I think originally when we started talking about formalizing our activism and our I wouldn't have called it philanthropy at that time. We definitely gave money to organizations that we connected with, and we were regularly donating charitable items, you know, I don't know. And as I find that as you get sort of more eyeballs on you, more people know who you are, the volume of requests increases. And so it was sort of like just a very standard, like a lot of people will just come to you and say, hey, we can like put this together in a more formal way. And it just so happened that this guy, I don't think you'll know him, but his name was Donald Trump. And he got elected to be president the first time, and that was pretty shocking. And we were like, wow, this feels like sort of unbelievable timing, because what sort of had felt like quite a positive momentum advancing the rights of LGBTQ people, we knew that was going to really shift. There was going to be some sort of like steps backwards, and there was going to be sort of like perhaps a backlash, you know, to some of the advancements that had come sort of in the Obama era. And we were right, you know, I think right away with the foundation, we just, we saw that there were sort of gaps in funding, specifically around, you know, women in the community, and specifically grassroots organizations that didn't necessarily have scalability in this like very obvious philanthropic way. Like a lot of funders, and a lot of the goal is to grow an organization, and there's like it's a complicated process, and there's applications, and right away people, I think because we made ourselves so available to hear the feedback, most of the people we would speak to at these organizations or in the sort of like more grassroots community were saying, if you could just make it easier for us to get funding, and you could make it easier for us to be funded again and again without worrying that we have to like do a big song and dance and prove that we've like grown our organization, that would be life-changing. And so we really started doing that. And it didn't feel like a revolution of any kind, although I do think that there is more of that style now, I think, in philanthropy. I think they call it like trust
trust philanthropy, I don't know, whatever. But this idea that the goal shouldn't just be to like take an organization and make it the new HRC. That's not the goal. So a lot of the work and the organizations that we have connected with and funded for a long time, they're small needs, like on paper, but they have like a huge impact. So for example, we work with an organization in Florida. One of their first grants that they applied for was just to pay for bus passes so that people could come from, you know, they were located in the city. They wanted people in the suburbs who didn't necessarily have access to getting into the city to be able to come to, you know, drop it to their organization. And we continue to fund organizations as long as they exist. You know, if they can keep going, we want to keep going with them. We sort of see them as having potential, and we see them as having value. I think using a different set of criteria than the larger funders.
And growth, you know, growth in and of itself isn't a virtue.
Oh, exactly.
Because actually,
And you know what's crazy? This is gonna sound kind of weird. We would always have this conversation amongst our board. It was like, actually the goal here is for us to not have to exist anymore. Like we want it to be so that we don't necessarily want the organizations to get bigger, because that might mean that the need is so much bigger. Which isn't to say that we're not meeting a need that is growing, but I think there was this idea that we could sort of flip some old-fashioned ideas on their head and not worry so much about following that sort of like, you know, that path.
really the central value it could be adaptability, not growth and expansion, but adaptability, responding, meeting to needs, identifying needs, shifting. That's, you know, that low to the ground stuff is because communities are listening to each other and tuning in and not just working from a policy basis.
Yes.
That's what's radical about the funding model you're talking about.
And that was what actually held our foundation back for a number of years. Next year will be 10 years, but the first handful of years we were criticized by the bigger organizations for being so versatile and for being so nimble. We were meeting the needs of the community in the moment, and that was holding us back from bigger corporates and funders who wanted to be able to say, we focus on this and that we give money to this. And I think the cool part of Tegan and Sara Foundation is, like Tegan and Sara, the band and the fans, we created a community. You know, we just had, one of our main programs is called Community Grants, and so we meet emergency needs from the community, and we kind of put together a cohort, and, you know, we'll fund everyone at the same time. And we did an open call for the first time in 10 years, and we got over 1,000 applications. And this is a meaningful number because that's 1,000 small grassroots LGBTQ organizations that are focusing right now on immediate needs of the community. That's overwhelming, it's staggering. You know, so if anyone has $5 million, we need some. So, but we were able to immediately get out the door $100,000. Right away we picked 23 that we thought had like so much potential. We've got 30 more that we vetted. And that is what Tegan and Sara Foundation really has become. We know, we understand what is happening in the community. We are sourcing all of those organizations that are doing immediate work and affecting the community in the moment, and we're vetting them, and we've got that list. And whether you feel moved to give to our foundation or one of them, we have that list. And I think, as Sara said, it's creating like a long-term relationship with these organizations where they know that the job they're doing, it doesn't have to be big and grandiose, it's just important. And I think that's why we continue to do the work. It's been super, super, super hard, but really, really, really inspiring. And again, now that guy got in again, I think, you know, there's no need like ever before. I mean, there are 900 religious freedom acts that are going to hit the Senate. Like, they are going to roll back rights like we haven't seen. You know, they're going to take away, I mean, they're going to try to take away gay marriage in a lot of places, you know. We talked about this before he came on stage. Every province pretty much in Canada is going to roll back rights on trans youth. Don't think it's an American problem. It's here too. And I don't want to get into I don't have children, but but they're so cute. Why don't you write a song? You're putting this pressure on me. I wish Sara would send me a song. Get going. I know. Yeah. I haven't done. I'm busy with the dog. But I'm very cognizant of the fact that I don't have children, and so I appreciate I shouldn't have a say on how people raise their children, but also it's your children, and the idea the government is telling people what their kids should feel or be like, or how their young lives should look, I know is a young queer person, and especially when Sarah and I were really young, like, you know, we had some gender dysphoria, and like the idea that I would have experimented with how I saw myself and then been told by a teacher or the government, like, that I can't use different pronouns, like, I'm sorry, like, kids can be anything they want, like, you know, like, my best friends have a kid who wants to go swimming. So that also inspires us to keep doing the work too, because it's like, it's so easy to be like, well, I'm middle-aged now, so I'm not afraid of anyone anymore, so I'll just stop caring. But like, I'm afraid for the next generation, I'm afraid for all of us still too. You know, afraid's terrible because that feels like giving up, but I mean, like, I'm empowered and
Yeah.
I want to fight and be protective.
And I would argue that as somebody who doesn't have children, that your voice weighing it in is actually really important. The people around us when we were raising our kids who weren't raising children were lifesavers. And also, you get perspective. Like as a parent, you're offered perspective by somebody on the outside who loves you and loves your kid, and can say, you know, are you getting a little triggered by that? No, whatever, you know. But also, they're also incredible allies for our kids, because I know that our daughters trust our non-parent chosen family members and family members, and they tell them things in confidence, but they also kind of know that somehow we're going to benefit from that, like, and they all are all of our children. Like, I think that would be a really great paradigm to shift in the world, where there's this real sense of responsibility to all children, because they are incredibly vulnerable.
Sure.
And
Well, also, I think I represent something, like, maybe because we're twins more than ever before too, it's the juxtaposition of the two of us will be yet another sort of mountain we'll climb as a band for the public. But like, I'm choosing not to have children. It's not because I don't like children. I actually love kids, and there was a time where I would have wanted to have children, but I am choosing not to, and that doesn't make me less than. It doesn't make me less interesting. It doesn't make my life less full. It doesn't make me selfish, shallow, and self-absorbed, although I'm a little bit. And it's a great book. It's a good joke. It's a great book about writers talking about not having children, just selfish, shallow, and self-absorbed. Anyway, yeah, it doesn't make me less than, you know, and I couldn't be happier for Sarah that she has a kid, and I'm so grateful for the experience of getting to be so close to a child in that way, you know. It's only happened a few times, but when he mistakes me for Sarah in that brief moment, I understand the absolute avalanche of emotion and hormones and attachment that must happen as a parent, and I'm so grateful to be just this close to it.
child adjacent.
Child adjacent feels great for me. But I hope going into the world, like, I can also be like, you can have a full life. You can be, you know, like, my partner and I we're dinkwads, double income, no kids with a dog, and it's great, but it doesn't make me less of an artist. It doesn't make me less compassionate. It doesn't make me want to fight less for people of our community or for young people or for the future. Like, you know, JD Vance.
Yeah.
Well, especially too when you think about, I mean, this has been a really eye-opening thing for me, even as I know that so many people in our audience are aging with us, but there is this feeling sometimes that somehow we are just older than everyone. Like, you just start to feel like you have this, I don't know what it is, it's the microphone and the stage and the thing that happens, but I feel this sort of concern, care, protection feeling for our community, but even more broadly the LGBTQ community. And now that I'm a parent, I used to be so indifferent to kids, but I get it now in the sense of, like, this isn't just about, like, caring about someone's kids. This is like, these are the people who are going to, like, change our bedpans and are going to be, like, sending us off, you know, at the end of our lives. And these are the people who are going to keep the wheels turning. And whatever you feel about the world and politics and capitalism and all of these things, like, young people that is the future. And and it sounds so stupid, but it's like, I didn't really get that before.
Yeah.
I didn't really get it. And I saw young people more just as, like, competitors, or like annoying people who was like, get out of the way, why are you here, you know, like,
Yeah.
why can't you take the later dinner reservation, must you come at 5:30? That's all I could see when I saw young people.
Yeah.
And now I just get it on a different level, and I think it's also part of what's making me feel really attached to the idea of parenting in communities, because I
I just do not believe that we are born bad or that we have bad feelings about people. And I see the joy and the sort of like the unbelievable acceptance that my son has for everything and just the wonder and joy. And it just makes me so sad to think that we learn to not like each other and not care for each other.
Yeah.
And because of something you think or something you feel. And I know that might change as he grows up and he starts to like adapt. Like he's in that very like I'm on ecstasy stage of life, you know, where everything like a leaf is amazing and he's always picking up garbage off the street and telling me it's beautiful and like it's wonderful. It's wonderful energy to be around. I just don't understand. I don't understand how it happened that we grow up and we hate each other so much, do such horrible things to each other. And I really do believe that the Tegan and Sara Foundation allows us to not fall into total despair, because I think we are so sensitive and we have had to see all over the world the way that our community is treated. We've toured in places where it is illegal to be gay, where people will put letters on the stage and tell us, like, you're literally the only people who know this, but I'm gay. You know, or who are serving, you know, but in the military. And
So then we read it on stage and we're like, come on up here.
No.
Let's
Oh God.
We've got a special message from Melissa.
I feel like we've just seen the sort of like the kind of quiet suffering of so many queer people around the world. I'm generally using the word queer to sort of capture the community here, but if we didn't have the foundation, I think I would have lost my mind.
So you're able to apply all the incredible sensitivity that you have, the empathy. You're able to find it's a place where you can channel your actions.
Yeah.
And make everything you feel into something that people can experience. And that is so consistent with your trajectory as artists, right? Like making something that people can experience, making an event, making something tangible, making something that changes people's lives, you know?
It's concrete. It's the exact opposite of cynicism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right? And of that kind of, well, what can we do anyway? That's the worst slippery slope.
Yeah.
That is the thing that gives me the most joy in my life. Whenever I see my kids experiencing hope, I think, amazing.
It's powerful.
Because it's so, you know, one can really spiral with awareness, but that is the most subversive thing. Hope, an active hope, an active optimism, an engaged optimism. That is the only way forward.
It's interesting too, like I have had so many opportunities, traveled all over the world and met amazing people and watched amazing films and read books and eaten amazing meals, all of these things. And at least in my situation, like I look at Sid and I just think, like I'm so desperate to know that his future will mean that he can do those things too. You know, that he will get to travel, that he will get to love people and be loved by people, and it, you know, I just think that is I don't know, that's like, I guess it is cynicism, you know, like as I sort of like was entering into like middle age, I did find myself thinking like, but what else? Like what else do, you know, and I think that's why I could sort of slip into this kind of comedy of like, oh, I don't really care what happens in the future and like young people are annoying or whatever. But now that I have a young person, I'm like, I suddenly do feel invested in the future in a different way, and I'm sort of embarrassed that I sort of.
Well, you're just seeing the world a different way.
Yeah,
Which,
really
by the
do.
way, happened to me recently. This is gonna sound absurd, but I swear I've never taken an edible before, but I took. Just stick with me.
She doesn't do drugs, you guys. She
I
doesn't.
don't. I actually literally do not. I don't. But recently, I have a house on an island, and my partner left me there. I asked her to, but like I was there. I was there because I wanted to be there, but she left me with our dog, and I didn't have like anything to do for days, and I was writing, which was like super inspiring, and I've like over 5 years really come to terms with the fact that I have this dog that distracts me all the time when I'm, you know, in a really creative place, and I've like reconciled that and like understand she's, you know, what's those irritating memes from the internet, like, you're annoyed, but it's their favorite part of the day or whatever. It's like a dog on a leash or whatever, and I'm like, sure. But the other day I was on this island, like 5-6 days had gone by, and my partner was on her way back the next day, but I was kind of feeling like, what, it would have been a great afternoon to go like sit on a patio and have a drink or something like that, but that wasn't gonna happen. I was on this island by myself, and so I went into the basement. When people come visit, sometimes I don't know why people always bring drugs with them, but I don't do drugs, so I just have this bag in the basement with like edibles and weed and things that like I would have loved to do as a teenager, but not now. And I, out of like sort of an act of desperation and also like a sort of like, ooh, what would this be like? I took an edible and I was writing, and then Georgia came and tapped my leg, and I was like, all right, I gotta take her for a walk. And we went on this like amazing walk. You guys, seriously, like it was, like I understood the meme in a whole different way. Like I could see her nose, like, I mean, if you've ever seen a dog's nose, I could see every part of her nose moving, like breathing in and smelling every, I was like, it was unbelievable. And I thought to myself, my God, so much of my life was chasing dopamine, you know what I mean? It was like chasing our career and building and sacrifice, and I must do this, and this is who I am, and I'm an artist, and I'm creative. And it was this really amazing moment where I was like, I literally had thoughts like, the world is so beautiful. Nature is important. We have to save it. You know, like, my dog is my best friend. You know, like, I had literally like those thoughts when I was walking, and I was like, what a gift. Not the edible, but like the relationship between me and the dog. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's so beautiful because it changed. I know, I'm sorry, that's almost 4 minutes, but it changed the world. When you had children, like it did, it changed the way you saw the world, and that access to hope, and fear, and all of the spectrum of emotions. Like it's what, you know, makes you human beings and artists.
And really, really paying that kind of close attention and the reward that is implied in that, and is sometimes contained in that. Back when you mentioned that Sid is fascinated by garbage, and you just tell it's so beautiful.
The other day he brought over a cigarette butt. And he's like, what is this? And I was like, he's never seen a cigarette. Actually, that's not true. We have this great vintage Peanuts book, and it's like, what is happiness, or what happiness means to me, I can't remember. It's from when we were little kids. And it's the most fucked up artifact. I was so excited to give it to him. I kind of went like, oh my God, this book, I'm gonna bring it home for him. And it's like, one of the things is like, happiness is when, you know, I don't get beat up on the way home from school. Happiness is when my dad gives me the wrapper from his cigar, like the little ring. those are the pages that, so I'm reading it to Sid, and my wife is like, wow, that's an interesting book. And I was like, you know, on one hand, I was really horrified. Like, he had so many questions, obviously, too. Like, it covered a range of, he hadn't seen a lot. Like, he's like, what is a cigar? Like, everything was new to him in the book. Like, he's used to, like, the boring usual shit. And so he was like, whoa, wow, this book is amazing. What are all these things? And what does it mean to be beat up, you know? And I actually thought to myself, you know, kids now, they're so sheltered, no wonder they're so traumatized when they start getting bullied, and there's
Wow, what a statement.
No, but I just go with me on this, like, apparently when we were kids, we were just preparing ourselves for it, you know? Or it was not a shock to me when we got to junior high, and kids were like, I mean, it was a little bit of a shock, but like kids were like, oh, I had sex this summer, and they were smoking cigarettes, and they were wearing their Club Monaco sweatshirts inside out, you know? And I was kind of like, wow, life moves fast, you know? But I feel like with Sid, you know, I love when he, like, I tried all of which to say when he brought me the cigarette butt, I was like, that's for adults, it's poison. Don't, if you ever find one, tell me. His whole thing right now is running around, anything we tell him, don't, if you ever see batteries call for a grown up. So every time he sees like a battery, like the other day we were in Home Depot and we were walking through the and he's doing this thing where he really needs to be far away from me, like he wants independence. And so I'm like, whatever, I'm trusting that he's just following me, and I'm like walking, acting. I'm walking through the aisle and I just hear, batteries! I turned around and I was like, yes, Sid, those are batteries. And he's like, a bomb's gonna go off. Anyways, I love it. I love how everything is just exciting, and even a cigarette butt on the ground.
I don't know how to make a segue from that. But I do have some questions from the audience that in our last little while, I thought there's some beautiful questions here. You up for that? Yeah?
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Here's a question. What is the most memorable impact story from your foundation grants?
Well, our flagship program is wow. Let me start again. Wow, what a great question. No.
Is the edible hitting
I
now?
did take it out. I didn't time it quite right, but
You were saving it for the flight.
yeah. One of our flagship programs is LGBTQ summer camps, and on any given year, that number changes slightly how many there are in North America. I think this year there's 29, but fluctuates from time to time. This year I believe there's 10 active in Canada, but for almost 10 years now we send 2 LGBTQ kids to summer camps where they can meet people like them, but maybe most importantly meet adults that look like them, that seem like them, that can sort of reflect to them a future. I think that's the scariest part. I'm sure you guys feel this way too, is when you were young and you realized you were queer, you were like, what will my life look like? Because you never saw it.
Yeah.
So I would say like the impactful thing that still gets me every single year is the testimonials from the parents, the people who work at the camps, and the kids. It's it's changing their lives. It's giving them hope. It's literally saving lives. And so it's one of our proudest achievements is helping those camps expand.
Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to start with you, Sarah. What's one attribute of each other that you wish you possessed? So I don't know if you can find one.
I mean, I think, in some strange way, if we were one person, I think that we possess sort of extremes of each other. Like Tegan is where I sometimes am perhaps somewhat, I don't think of myself as insecure.
Hey Biden, what's an attribute you like about me?
That you wish you possessed.
Okay, you were rambling for I was very confident. Having a stroke
This
or
one's
whatever.
easier though, it's just an attribute.
Okay, go ahead and start then.
Okay, Sarah's very patient.
And Sarah, if you have to pass on
I
this,
guess
that's
confidence.
I'll take it.
okay. Here's a two-parter. Would you rather play small venues or large crowds?
That's a really tricky question. It really just depends on the venue, because I love a big crowd. Like, who doesn't love a big crowd? Big crowds. That's exciting. But sometimes small venues allow for a real sense of the experience and the show. Like, it can feel more granular or something. Like, I saw the people. We made a funny joke. We could pace the show slower. Whereas when you're playing to a big crowd, I think there's momentum is just a different game.
Do you feel the same in theater? Is there a massive difference in the size of the crowds?
Yeah, massive difference, and they're both thrilling in different ways.
Yeah.
And it's hard to choose.
This seems like an incredible space.
It's beautiful.
It would be so immersive.
Yeah.
I would be totally happy in a room this size playing a show, but they're undeniably walking out on a festival stage and seeing tens of thousands of people it's really exciting. And I always think of us we're the guy that gets shot out of the cannon. Once you've been shot out of the cannon 100 times, it's hard to get excited about getting shot out of a cannon.
I don't know.
I'm just saying, it's sometimes it takes takes a really big cannon, you know, to like, I don't know, I can't finish that, but I just, sometimes a big crowd will just, it's like it's the jolt you need to
Yeah.
get really excited.
Yeah, yeah, cool.
Makes you feel like you didn't think that was cool. I feel like you're taking on Tegan now, and I just feel ganged up.
You know what? That was my management affirmation because I was acknowledging it but moving on.
Yeah.
It was. So you caught me. I was inauthentic. I wasn't present in the moment for you.
No, you know what?
I liked it.
It was giving director for sure. I liked it.
No, it was good. It was good. And
I like a woman to be in charge.
all the great journalists and like interviews that we've done, they very rarely acknowledge your response.
It is kind of a
They
weird
generally move on to the next question.
Oh.
And I remember before we did Fresh Air with Terry Gross, I told Tegan I gave her a few tips because I was like, listen,
Because I'm like too dumb to
No.
listen to Fresh Air.
I just said, when Terry Gross gives her intro and says, welcome Tegan and Sara, don't say anything. Do not speak, okay? She's gonna just go straight from welcome Tegan and Sara into her first question. And
I'm a good person because when she said, welcome Tegan and Sara, for a moment, I was like, I'm gonna say something just to annoy Sara. And then I was like, no, I'll give it to her. It's okay. But it's her birthday, so.
it can be a bit disarming though, because you'll give like what you hope is a great answer, and your fantasy is that Terry Gross will say, my God, what a great answer, Sara. But instead she'll be like, cool.
You don't even get cool from Terry.
I love the canon.
Work it into
I
something.
may work it into something else. Like I was actually thinking of what it must feel like to step into a place where there's tens of thousands of people. Like honestly, my dream of being a rock star is fueled only by that.
Do you have any stage fright?
Terrible.
Like you
stage
couldn't imagine getting up on stage in front of tens of thousands of people, even doing some sort of like crowd announcement or?
Yeah, I could do anything where I don't have to reveal myself personally, no problem. Like in a situation like this where I'm chatting freely with friends in front of people with my wife, and it's completely
Yeah.
No, what an actor does, I think the main gift for me as a director, the gift of my life in being a director is I watch actors be able to be on stage and reveal themselves through the work, and it's a level of artistry and confidence, and that is what you do when you're performing. You're revealing yourself through something that's very personal, there's a lot of technique, but to do that in front of hundreds of thousands of people like that, it's mind-blowing, it's very appealing. So I get the canon thing.
Yeah, it's okay, this is kind of weird. I don't know if I've ever totally articulated this before, but one of the things that I say to myself when I'm in front of a large crowd, because you feel very small, and you're on very large, the stage is ridiculously huge, and no matter how close they put you together as a team, you feel really disconnected from all the people on stage. The audience is so far away, because there's barriers, and there's this, and there's that. And I always tell myself, I am as big as the PA system. Like, you are the PA system. I don't
Right.
think of you, the person, you are all of the speakers. And that's what I tell myself. That's something you would think, I'm an edible, for sure.
That's good.
You are all the speakers.
It's kind of good, like a metaphor for life, like when you're afraid, like there's that saying, like if you're worried or nervous, imagine everyone naked in front of you, and I'm like, that is the worst thing.
Terrible.
That was
Disgusting.
what? But that is I'm as big as a PA. I have access to that presence. That's a good life.
You really pulled it around. I think you impressed me.
It only took like 6 minutes, but I feel like we're back on track. So.
Okay, so here's one. What song are you guys most proud of? That's how it's phrased. I love it.
Well, an hour ago I made some jokes about how only 2 songs are memorable on our records. Obviously, no, that's not really true. I think I always kind of go back to our album, The Con. which came out in 2007. I think it was a real labor of love for Sarah and I, and it came on the heels of a really big successful song of ours, Walking with a Ghost, Sarah's song. And I think a lot of people in our orbit thought we would make a commercial record, like we'd follow it up with a commercial record to try to get on alternative radio again, and instead we made a 14-song album about death and loss, and it was not initially reviewed very well, but became one of our best reviewed, and I think like probably one of our most beloved records. But when we went out and toured it, we'd play the entire thing start to finish, and then the next day we'd finish it, we'd play it backwards, like we'd start on the last, like we went out and toured the entire record. Like we didn't just add a couple songs to the set. We believed in the songs and the story we were telling about this like series of horrible losses that had happened to us. We felt that we needed every chapter, like, and so yeah, like I think of that piece of work as like a song, because it's a story, so.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. Here's a two-part from the same person. What advice would you guys give to your teenage selves?
That was one of the biggest gifts of writing the memoir, actually, was I spent so much time with, it felt like I was spending so much time with my adolescent self. I was so afraid to look at the photos and the videos. I preferred the memory. And then I really felt like I got super into the photos and the videos, and I would watch these just hours of videotape, archival footage of us with our friends, and I had terrible longing to go back there. Like, to be with my family again. Like,
I'm right here.
no, not just, no, to be back in our childhood home, to be with my mom and my stepdad, to be with my friends, that feeling of like, just going and being with like 20 kids at someone's house in their basement, or going to a park, and I felt so kind of re-immersed in that life and that person, and I felt, this is gonna be cheesy, I thought, God, she's so brave. I felt this new, like I had been sort of like, I guess a bit embarrassed, and sort of had like put her away for a really long time. And because I spent all this time back in that part of our life and back in that version of me, I felt like she was the coolest person. And I was just like, oh, what I would give. Like, I know this is like therapy a bit, but I was like,
You're not supposed to do that, you're supposed to give the audience something.
I actually talked about it in therapy. I kept saying, I wish I could go back and be with her, and like tell her how great she is. And my therapist was like, she's here right now. Yeah, that was fairly big. So I feel like I did a lot of healing. Yeah.
What about you, Tegan?
Compete with that, Tegan.
I will.
Yeah, I think it was a really cool experience. I mean, it was obviously our first experience writing, like doing the memoir, although we had really loved writing before we started making music and used to write, but it was really cool to revisit that younger self and to like extrovert some of the internal thoughts and insecurities, and I think probably that was my lasting impression also. I was much more confident than Sarah, and I think a little less tortured than her at that age, but I did get this overwhelming sense at 38 when I was writing it that we really misunderstood how great, like we were really lovely kids, like we were really sweet, we had great friends, we had amazing parents, we were really charismatic. Watching the photos in the video, or looking at the video, I was like, yeah, it's too bad that I don't think very many people told us. Well, this part's sad, I guess, like we weren't good students, you know. Everyone would say to our parents, like, oh, they're very bright, but they're just not focused. You know, we went to a massive public school, you know, 40 kids to a classroom, like, you know, just, we were untethered, we were really unfocused. There was no one that really took that much of an interest in us, to be honest, and I don't mean...
You're talking about grown-ups.
Yeah,
kids
adults.
loved us.
Yeah. No, adults, like, you know, and my parents loved it, like, we were very loved, like, that was very clear, we were very loved, but no one ever sat us down and said the kinds of things people say to their kids now, like, it just was a different era, you know, we were really, in the most respectful way, we were neglected a lot because our parents worked so much and went to school and were just not around, and especially through high school, we were alone all the time. And so just nobody was there at that time in our life where we probably just needed an adult to be like, hey, FYI, like, you're really great and you're gonna do great things and don't worry so much. So yeah, I think I'll probably just go back and be like, everything works out great.
Yeah, that's lovely, that's beautiful advice, like, when I say it to our kids, and I've learned this a lot from Anne-Marie, because Anne-Marie really can conjure up a lot of faith, and saying it's gonna be okay, and really believing it, it's beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful that you're able to contact that self-love and compassion for that much younger person. And, you know, we were joking about time is not linear. Well, time is not linear. And in fact, you do have your arm around that young girl. You are looking after her, right? That is happening. I think that's beautiful.
Here's a lightning round one. Where would you like to travel to that you haven't been? That's the question that came in.
There's like so much of Asia that we didn't get to travel to. Like, I could go to like Vietnam or Thailand or something like that. I'm like feeling very beachy.
I don't know. Because just going to a coffee shop in the car with my son feels exhausting to me right now. And yeah, so right now I'm just like, I'm excited if we just get to my mom's. Like, we did it.
Yeah, fair. Here's one that I'm gonna read as well. As a teenager, I used to listen to your music as a sad little gay kid in love with their best friend. My mom ended up loving your music, and we've been going to your shows for 15 years. Today I'm here with my mom and that same best friend who is now my wife. Did you ever imagine the huge impact you would have on queer people's lives? And how does it feel?
That's really moving. No. We came up in a different time, right? Because our music career started in the late 90s, so there was no social media, there was no way to reflect back into the world what we were going through, but also no way to see what we were about to face, what we were about to go through. There was no manual for how to start a music career. There was no instructions, there was no YouTube and Spotify and social media to be like, aha, that's okay. We rode around in carriages. It was hard to have a career back then. The bonnets were in the way. You know, like not being able to see it. I was like, we were just kind of like, we were kind of stumbling around in the dark a bit. But my mom tells some pretty great stories in those early days of standing in rooms, like specifically, you know, we won a contest in high school, and she does this really kind of like out of body version of being in that room and watching all these adults and college students watching us, and then we won. And it just was a silly, you know, garage band competition in high school, but everyone else was older than us, and the fact that we won was a big deal, and a lot of media attention happened, and we got signed. And she tells a story about she was looking around at people and asking them, like, are they good? She was like, I thought you were good, but I was your mom. Like, you know, and so she's like, in the months that followed, you know, friends would be over and Sarah would be upstairs rehearsing. We'll call it rehearsal. We need a director to step in, I'll tell you that. But mostly arguing with each other and yelling at one another as we worked out songs. And my mom said that it continued for months, like where she would be asking herself, you know, like, are they good? Like, and I can't remember the question anymore, but
I would just like to say that I was gonna,
no, it's funnier if I don't answer it, but yeah,
it's like you don't deserve it because you didn't even remember.
you saw where I was going, right?
Who's Biden now? No, I didn't. But it's a fun roller coaster I've been on for a long time, so I was like, we'll get somewhere and it'll be fun.
But it was a nice visual of mom, you know, like being like, yeah,
Are they good? You feel like mom's watching you always, looking down on you?
Yeah.
Talk about that there?
wait, she's still alive.
I think the first time.
I mean, we've been up here for over an hour. It's possible something tragic happened. They'd come get us.
finish. I'll finish.
This is very important. Don't tell them their mom died.
I don't like this. I don't like it. Okay. I remember when our audience shifted to accommodate the parents of our fans. Like, I remember when our audience mostly looked like kids our age. You know, we played a lot of like college campuses, and we played a lot of bars in college towns, and that was really fun. And we spent a lot of time out at the merch table talking to people. These were our peers. We weren't in college, but we were college age, and we were hanging out with our peers. And then I remember around 2013, like when we put out our record Heartthrob, you know, our audiences had expanded so much, you know, that intimacy had changed, but we would do these meet and greets, and people would come with their parents, and they would say, oh, my parent introduced me to your music, or I into your music and I needed my parent to bring me to
That's why I was talking about my mom. Now I remember.
And we found that profoundly moving, because our parents had introduced us to music and had been such willing like participants in our music journey. Like, first they were bringing us to the concerts that mattered to them, then they were helping us get to concerts that we cared about, and they were listening to the music with us. Like, you know, we wrote about this in our memoir, but you know, went from like, why would you listen to Nirvana, and like, let's talk critically about what this music means and what these lyrics are, to then our stepdad buying Nirvana CDs for us and making mixtapes for his car so he would listen to Nirvana as well. And so there was this really significant bond that we had with our family around music and the shared experience. So when that moment, when we shifted into that sort of like, you know, parent-kid relationship at our shows, that was huge for us. Like, it was like, that was significant. I remember thinking we're doing something right, because we swear so much and we're gay. And so I was like, the parents are here.
But I don't think that we imagined this far into the future.
No. But that was like,
No
that was
way.
when things really changed, where I was like, we're having an impact, and we're able to connect with people, and we're able to connect parents and kids together. And that, to me, was like, you know, was a huge thing.
And the second part of the question was, how does it feel? You have 2 minutes.
I will say I feel very grateful.
Yeah.
I feel really grateful.
Yeah.
Like, it took a lot of people and a lot of support and a lot of work to, not just to be musicians, but just like to keep, like, to enjoy it. Like, I like to say that I think we're still pretty into what we do. Like, we're not crusty old, like, you know, make a record and go tour, you know, and we still.
We're not jaded.
No, we're not jaded. I don't think so. I think we're pretty excited. I think we're always thinking about ways to give back and how to, you know, have new novel experiences, the canon thing, you know, like, and I think,
Bigger cannons.
yeah, smaller cannons even. Yeah, just how tiny can we make the cannon? We still fit. So yeah, like, a lot of gratitude, which I know is like a thing people say, but it's like actually really genuine, you know. It doesn't mean that we aren't holding other emotions too, but mostly gratitude that we get to create things. What a life we've had, you know.
Yeah, and I would say you just vibrate with curiosity, and that is a beautiful counterpart to gratitude. As you know, it's just beautiful, and it's inspiring to be around you, and it's so much fun to.
But are you so exhausted too? Like, are you like, can't wait to go get away from us after this?
No, I'm grieving the separation that's going to happen imminently. Like,
We've had a really tremendous time.
We
We
have
just
had-
think both of you are so incredible. It's an honor to be invited to hang out with you guys and do this talk. It's really
it's really a thrill. It's an honor. Likewise, it's an honor to be with all of you.
Yes.
I really want to thank you again for showing up, because showing up is everything we need now. We need so much to show up for each other and together in all the spaces that we can, with all the love we can, with all the gratitude, the curiosity, the openness, and the courage that it takes sometimes to just step into any given room. We're all here for you, you know, like we're all here. We all have each other's backs, and I think this is a great way to be launching the rest of Pride. And your books are pre-signed and on sale on the front, and I really encourage you to buy it, especially now after having had a chance to hear stories and hear your voices, and It's even a more meaningful read. And thank you. And Marie, is there anything you want to say?
No, this has been amazing and a dream come true and such a gift. Thank you.
Thank you so much.